We have seen how code can be expressed as pseudocode, which is like a simple description of how a program can function. The code below shows a very simple piece of pseudocode for entering two numbers into a program, multiplying them together, and then outputting the result. Now, while this code might make sense to a programmer, it might not make sense to someone with no programming experience at all. Sometimes other people will need to see what a program needs to do, and they may not be software engineers. Such people may be the client, the end user of the program, a project manager, or a business analyst. These people would not be able to read and understand pseudocode or actual code, especially code that gets more complex. That's why flowcharts exist. They are a simple way for non-programmers to see how a piece of software works. Flowcharts are themselves a language. Anybody who has seen a flowchart will be able to read, follow, and understand it. That makes flowcharts a very powerful tool for communicating ideas. The flowchart for the pseudocode would look like this. Flowcharts can also be used by programmers to quickly see how programs should work and help solve problems in code. But what do each of these different shapes mean? All flowcharts use the same symbols for different parts of the program. These symbols have been approved by the British Computer Society and are standard across the world. The connector symbol shows the direction of the flow in your diagram, sometimes known as the flow of control. These will always start at one symbol and end at another with an arrowhead showing the direction of flow. The terminal symbol represents the start and end of our flowchart. Both begin and end use the same shape, which is a flattened circle with a connector either going out of it, begin, or into it, end. The input-output symbol represents either some data that is being entered from the user or data being shown to the user. Both input and output uses a flattened rectangle known as a parallelogram. You can tell which is input and output by the text inside the rectangle. The process symbol represents where your program does something that is not input or output. A process could be a mathematical calculation, a database check, or searching for something in a list. In a flowchart, a process uses a square box with text describing what the process does. The decision symbol represents a question that your code is asking, or an if statement in your code. A decision is drawn as a diamond that will always have one connector going into it and two connectors coming out of it. The two connectors coming out are what to do if the answer is yes and what to do if the answer is no. The subprogram symbol represents another process that is defined elsewhere. This might have its own separate flowchart. In programming, this could represent a subroutine or function. This is like a block of code that is designed to perform a frequently used process. Flowcharts are a simple graphical way of representing pseudocode as a drawing. It should be possible for our flowchart to almost exactly match our pseudocode. For example, take a look at the pseudocode we used in part 1 of this lesson, and we will see how the flowchart matches the pseudocode. Let's start by looking at line 1 of the pseudocode. This matches the following parts of the flowchart. Notice we have the begin and the input. The begin just represents the start of the program. Sometimes in pseudocode we'll include a begin at the start of the pseudocode too. Now we can look at line 2 of the pseudocode. This matches the following parts of the flowchart. Again, this matches the pseudocode very closely. We have input the second number and stored it in a variable called second number. Now we can look at line 3 of the pseudocode. This matches the following parts of the flowchart. While this looks a little different, as the flowchart is more descriptive, you can see it does the same thing. We multiply first number and second number and store the result in a variable called result. Now we can look at line 4 of the pseudocode, our final line of code. This matches the following parts of the flowchart. You can easily see that our flowchart matches our pseudocode almost exactly. It just represents it in an easier to understand graphical form. So, flowcharts are a simple graphical way for a non-specialist to look at pseudocode. All flowcharts use the same symbols for different parts of the program. These include connectors, begin-end symbols, input-output symbols, process symbols, and decision symbols. it should be possible for our flowchart to almost exactly match our pseudocode.